Now let's create our player scene. So I'm going to go up to scene, new scene, and I'm going to add a root node which is going to be a kinematic body, Judy. And I'm going to rename this node to player. I'm going to add a new node to it which is going to be collision shape. And this time I'm going to add an animated sprite. Before that, we will usually add a sprite to our player node, but now we're going to use an animated sprite because we actually want to animate our player using different sprites. And the difference between an animated sprite and an animation node that we used before is that in the animation node we are actually animating properties of our node, and with an animated sprite we are actually changing the sprite each frame so we can get a sense of motion and then create an animation because of that. So to show you how this works, we have to click here on frames while selecting our animated sprite, click on frames and click on new sprite frames. And then just click it again, so it's going to open the sprite frames tab for us. Here you'll see that we have an animation called default, and I'm going to rename this to idle. And the speed is going to be only 1 FPS because we will only have one animation here, or one sprite, sorry. And I'm going to go to our player folder, and I'm going to drag and drop the bunny one stand to this area right here. And now you see that we already have a sprite for our player to see. And here under the animations, I'm going to click here on this plus icon, and I'm going to rename this animation to jump. And on a jump animation, I'm going to first take the ready sprite and then the jump sprite. And this animation is going to be 10 frames per second. And again, you can change this value if you want to, but I'm going to leave this as is, and I'm going to turn off looping because we actually only want our player to go to the ready sprite and then jump and stay as it is right now, because basically our player is going to be jumping almost all the time on our game, and we don't want him to be looping through this when he's actually on the air. Now I'm going to close this sprite frames window. I'm going to zoom in on our player, and I'm going to set the collision shape to be rectangle shape 2D. And while dragging the inner handles, I'm going to set it to be hopefully the size of our player. And now I can save this scene under our scenes folder. I'm going to call it player. Now we are going to add a script to our player. So attach a new script, and be careful, I almost added to our collision shape and we want to add it to our player node. So that script, and I'm going to save it on our scripts folder. And this is going to be a really complex script, probably one of the most complex ones that we have yet created. So we're going to need a few things here. And the first one is going to be a few constants. We're going to have to emulate our own gravity here. So we're going to need a gravity constant, which I'm going to set to 1500. And we're also going to need a gravity increment, which is going to be set to 2500. And also a jump decrement. It's going to be set to 100. Then we're going to need the width of our screen, the size of our sprite, and actually it's going to be the half size of our sprite, so half sprite width. A few control variables down here, which are going to be to check if our player is jumping. It's going to be initialized with false. And then one variable to set our current jump force. It's going to be initialized at 0, and our current gravity is going to be initialized at 0 again. And here on the ready, we're going to need to take the value of our screen and also the half sprite width. So screen width is going to be equal to get viewport rect dot size dot x, And here on our have sprite width, we would usually go down to our sprite node and then take its size from the texture. But right now you see that we don't have a texture down here. We actually have frames. So we'll first have to access our frames and select one sprite from our frames and then get that information. And to do that, first we're going to need a reference to our animated sprite here. So var, actually already var sprite or animated sprite is going to be equal to animated sprite. And here on already, I'm going to set the have sprite width to be equal to animated sprite dot get, actually animated sprite dot frames. So we're accessing all of the frames from our animated sprite dot get frame, and here we have to pass the name of the animation that we want to get a sprite from, which is going to be the idle. And here we need to pass the index of the sprite, which is going to be 0, because remember, if you go back here to our frames, you see that on the idle animation we only have one sprite, which is at the index 0. So index 0, then we are going to get its width and divide it by 2. And now we're going to save this. And then when we start, we're going to set the current gravity of our player to be equal to our gravity constant.